He watched her laugh with someone else, the Alpha King's breaking point. The castle of Blackthorn sat atop the jagged cliffs like a dark sentinel watching over the stormy sea below. Brr. Its towers pierced the clouds, black stone glinting with moisture, and lightning often danced across its battlements, setting the kingdom below into a restless hush. Within these ancient walls, King Draven ruled. Known as the Alpha King, he commanded both fear and respect. His subjects whispered of his strength, his cunning, and the ruthless way he maintained order. Burst and sharp eyes. There was a man haunted by something far deeper than power, a longing that gnawed at his soul. Draven's throne room was grand and solemn, with vaulted ceilings carved with scenes of battles long past. Tapestries of dark blue and silver hung along the walls, depicting dragons, warriors, and kings who had come before him. Candles flickered along the long hall, casting dancing shadows that seemed to echo with the voices of the dead. From his high seat of black stone, Draven watched the great hall below as nobles gathered for the evening feast. But he was not watching their manners or their politics. His gaze was fixed on Lady Elora. Elora, with her dark hair spilling like a river over her shoulders, and her laugh that rang like sunlight in a storm, moved through the crowd with an effortless grace. She was a noble woman promised to Draven in a political alliance, a union of power and convenience. Yet she had never belonged to him in heart. Her laughter, soft and musical, caught the attention of every man in the hall. Tonight she laughed with Sir Kaelin, a young knight with a handsome smile and golden hair. Draven's chest tightened. He was used to control. He was used to commanding respect, loyalty, even fear. But he had never been used to longing like this, nor the sharp sting of jealousy. He clenched his fists, the knuckles white against the dark velvet of his sleeve. He wanted to step down from the throne, stride through the crowd, and claim her with all the authority his name demanded. But another part of him, the part that feared losing himself, feared what he could become if he gave in, held him back.
So he remained silent, hidden in the shadows above, watching.
Elara's laughter rang louder, and for a moment Draven felt as if the air around him shivered. He could see the subtle way she leaned toward Kaelin, the tilt of her head, the sparkle in her eyes. Each small gesture was a knife twisting in his chest. The court continued with its music and conversation, but Draven felt as if the world had narrowed to just two figures below him, the woman he desired and the man daring to draw her attention. The wind howled along the battlements, rattling the windows, and Draven's mind flashed with memory. Visions of a time before he had claimed the throne, before the crown had pressed down upon his head like the weight of the world. He remembered promises made in whispers to himself, dreams of a kingdom ruled not just by fear, but by balance and justice. And yet here he was, the Alpha King, trapped in his own castle, watching a life that could be his slip through his fingers. As the feast continued, the laughter of Elara and Sir Kaelin grew louder, and something stirred in the depths of Draven's blood. Not anger. No, it was more primal than that. It was a longing, an ache that could not be named, a hunger that was not for power but for connection. He had always known the darkness in himself, the part that craved control, strength, and dominion. But now, he felt something else. Vulnerability. A vulnerability he hated to recognize. A servant approached, bowing low, and whispered in his ear, "My king, the lady requests a word with you." Draven did not move. His eyes remained on her. The thought of speaking to her, of stepping into the hall and confronting what he felt, made his heart race. And yet the sight of her smile, the way it lit the dim hall like firelight, was more unbearable than silence. He heard her voice call his name, soft and deliberate. "Your Majesty, would you honor me with your company?" For a heartbeat, he felt a crack in his armor. Brace. Slowly, deliberately, he descended the steps from the balcony, his long black cloak trailing like smoke behind him. Every eye in the hall turned to him as he moved with the quiet authority of a king and the silent torment of a man in chains. Break. Elara stepped forward, bowing gracefully, but when she looked up, their eyes met. Her gaze was steady, curious, almost daring. Brr. And in that moment, Draven felt a collision of fear and desire, the ancient pulse of magic that had always whispered through the stones of Blackthorn. The hall seemed to disappear around them. Inspiration. Candles flickered, shadows twisted. Inspiration. Even the music softened. It was just him and her, two forces caught in a silent battle, neither yielding. "My lady," he said, voice low, steady, but with an edge she had not heard before.
Your laughter carries farther than you know. Elara tilted her head, a faint smile playing at her lips.
Inspiration. Does it disturb you, your majesty? Draven's jaw tightened. It should not. And yet, he paused, swallowing hard. Words he had never spoken to anyone before hovered at the edge of his tongue. Breath. But he swallowed them down. He was a king. He was a warrior. And above all, he was alpha. Burp. Vulnerability was weakness, and weakness could not rule Blackthorn. Elara's eyes softened, just a little, as if she sensed his struggle. She did not speak. She simply watched him, letting the silence fill the space between them. A silence heavier than any words. Ray. From the corner of his eye, Draven noticed Sir Kaelin's gaze on him, sharp and calculating. The knight did not notice the quiet power in the tension between king and lady, but Draven did. He felt the stirrings of a protective fire, not just for himself, but for the woman who had made his chest ache without touch or promise. And then, as though the castle itself recognized the moment, a shadow moved along the far wall, a dark figure, almost translucent, gliding silently. Draven's instinct snapped into focus. The presence was not human. It was the kind of thing that belonged in the stories whispered in fear around hearth fires. A wraith, bound to the castle, tied to the ancient curse that had haunted his family for generations. His eyes narrowed. The hall seemed colder, the candlelight flickering more violently. Elara noticed the change in him and took a small step closer, instinctively seeking the warmth that contrasted with the icy tension surrounding them. "Do you feel it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Draven did not answer immediately. He did not need to. The shadow hovered near, silent, observing, as if it knew the secrets of both their hearts. He clenched his fists, every muscle in his body coiling with tension, yet he remained calm in appearance. "Yes," he said finally, voice low. "I feel it."
And I will not let it harm you. Elara's eyes widened slightly.
She had heard rumors of the Alpha King's ruthlessness, of his unyielding power. Yet here, in this moment, she saw another side, a man willing to step into danger for someone else. A man who, despite his fearsome reputation, could feel deeply, even painfully. The shadow moved closer, and the air seemed to thicken. A low whisper echoed through the hall, almost imperceptible, but Draven caught it. "She belongs to the darkness, unless you claim her first." He froze. His mind raced. Was this part of the curse? A test? Or a warning? The weight of generations pressed down on him, but beneath it all a single truth rang clear. He could not, would not, allow her to slip away, not to fear, not to fate, not to anyone. Alara's hand brushed lightly against his as she stepped back, instinctively retreating from the growing darkness. The brush was electric, and Draven felt it like a spark that could ignite or destroy.
He wanted to reach for her, to hold her, to tell her everything his lips could not. But the hall seemed to close around them, the shadow growing larger, the air heavier.
Without a word, he extended his hand, not demanding but offering. The gesture was small, but it carried the weight of a promise. Protection, desire, and the beginning of a bond neither could deny. Elara hesitated, torn between instinct and reason, between duty and the magnetic pull of the Alpha King. The shadow lingered, almost sentient, watching, waiting. And then, as if the castle itself exhaled, the wraith vanished into the walls, leaving only silence and the echo of its warning. Draven's eyes never left Elara's. His heart pounded, a dangerous rhythm that threatened to betray the calm mask he wore. He wanted to speak, to tell her that the world outside the hall could burn, that only she mattered. But the words failed him. Instead, he bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, control, and unspoken yearning. The feast continues, he said, his voice steady, though every fiber of him ached. Walk with me, my lady. Elara nodded, tentative, and fell into step beside him. Yet neither of them spoke further, each lost in thoughts heavier than any words. As they moved toward the exit of the hall, Draven glanced back one last time at the spot where the shadow had lingered. He felt a chill crawl over him, a reminder that the darkness that haunted his family had not yet released its grip. And in the quiet of his heart, a question took root, dangerous and undeniable. Could he protect her? Could he claim what he had longed for, not with fear or power, but with love? The storm outside howled against the castle walls, and in the distance lightning split the sky. Draven's eyes met Alara's once more, and he saw something in her gaze that made his chest tighten, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and the faintest glimmer of hope. And then, as if the castle itself had conspired to keep them on edge, a faint whisper reached his ear once more. Choose, before it is too late. Draven's hand tightened around the edge of his cloak. He did not look away. He would not. Tonight, the Alpha King's breaking point had begun. The moon hung low over Blackthorn, a silver eye casting pale light across the kingdom. Shadows stretched long over the walls, creeping like fingers across the stones of the castle. Inside, the air felt heavy with anticipation, as if the very walls knew that the balance of power and heart was about to be tested. King Draven walked through the moonlit gardens, the black cloak of his kingship trailing behind him. Every step echoed softly against the cobblestones. Lady Elara followed close, her dark hair brushing against the tips of the rose bushes, her eyes wide in wonder and caution. The gardens of Blackthorn were no ordinary gardens. Twisted trees bent under the weight of centuries, their branches reaching out like grasping hands. Mist curled along the ground, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Statues of forgotten kings and queens lined the paths, their eyes seeming to follow anyone who dared walk between them. Magic lingered in the air, subtle yet persistent, reminding all who entered that Blackthorn was not merely a castle. It was a kingdom alive with power, both old and dangerous.
You brought me here for safety? Elara asked quietly, her voice barely above the whisper of wind through the leaves.
Draven shook his head. Not for safety, he said, his voice low, controlled. For clarity!
There are forces at work that neither of us can ignore!
Desperation. Forces that want to see me fail. Forces that want to see you taken. Elara frowned. Taken? The curse, he said, his gaze darkening. Aberrations. It has haunted my family for generations. Every Alpha King before me faced it.
Every bond they tried to form was tested by shadow and magic. Love unclaimed or unreturned brings chaos.
Aberration. The curse feeds on desire left unspoken, on hearts left uncertain. Elara shivered, though not from the cold. The weight of Draven's words pressed against her chest. And what does that mean for us? Draven stopped walking, turning to face her. The moonlight traced the sharp lines of his face. The kingly strength mingled with the shadow of longing in his eyes.
It means, he said slowly, that I cannot afford to lose you.
Not to fear, not to fate, aberration. Not to anyone. And yet,
I cannot force your heart. That is the cruel part.
aberration. The curse waits for hesitation. It waits for doubt. Aberration. And he paused, struggling against the tide of words he rarely allowed himself to speak. I do not want it to claim you.
Elara's gaze softened, but fear flickered there too.
And if it does, what then? Draven's jaw tightened. Then it will claim both of us, and the kingdom may fall with it. For a long moment, the only sound was the rustle of leaves and the distant crash of waves against the cliffs. Then, without warning, a shrill cry echoed through the gardens, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Shadows shifted among the trees, forming into shapes that were not quite human. Wraiths, the cursed spirits that had haunted Blackthorn for centuries, glided silently toward them, their eyes glowing faintly with blue fire. Draven moved instinctively, stepping in front of Elara.
Stay behind me, he commanded. Elara did not hesitate.
Her heart pounded, but she did not run. She had seen the strength of the Alpha King before, glimpsed the power he wielded when protecting what he loved. Aberration. And now she felt it again, the invisible barrier he threw around her. A promise that he would not allow harm to touch her. The wraiths hovered closer, circling like hungry crows. Aberration. Draven's hand swept through the air, a command of authority and ancient magic that caused the shadows to recoil slightly. He could feel the curse in the air, a pulse of hunger and malice, testing him, testing their bond. Aberration. Elara took a deep breath and stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. We can face this together, she said. Her voice was small but filled with courage. Draven's eyes met hers, breath. For the first time he saw not only fear, but strength. She was not just a noble woman bound by politics. She was someone who could stand beside him, who could fight, who could survive. His heart twisted, a mixture of pride, longing, and fear. Together they advanced toward the wraiths. Draven's presence seemed to anchor the magic in the gardens, while Elara's calm courage gave them both strength. The wraiths shrieked and recoiled at their unity, but the threat was far from over. Suddenly one of the wraiths darted forward, faster than the eye could follow, aiming straight for Elara. Without thinking, Draven moved like lightning, intercepting the attack. Aberration. He struck with authority, sending the wraith back into the shadows. Elara's hand found his, gripping it instinctively. You could have been hurt, she exclaimed, fear lacing her tone. Draven's gaze softened, yet it remained strong, unyielding. Operation. It is my place to protect you, he said simply. She looked at him, the silver light of the moon painting her face with pale hope and worry. Brr.
And yet you still let me walk beside you. You could have sent me away, made me safe.
Operation.
He shook his head, a faint, almost bitter smile touching his lips.
Brit. I will not send you away. Not from me. Not from this moment. The curse may test us. The shadows may threaten us, but I
will not run from what I feel. Alara's breath caught.
Operation. She had heard tales of the Alpha King's passion, his cruelty to enemies, his unyielding command. But this raw vulnerability was something she had not expected. It drew her closer, not just in fear but in fascination, in trust, in something deeper she could not yet name. The wraiths retreated, circling at a distance, hissing in frustration. Draven's eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness. He could feel the curse's hunger pulsing in the night, like a heartbeat that mirrored his own. The air itself seemed to pulse with tension, magic, and a dangerous promise. We must leave, he said finally, his voice low and urgent. The curse stirs more strongly at night, and the shadows will grow bolder. We must find the place where the old magic sleeps. The heart of Blackthorn. Elara nodded, silently trusting him. She had seen him command armies, rule a kingdom, and stand against enemies that would have broken lesser men. Arrayed. Yet in this moment she saw something more. Something that called to her heart. Something that frightened her, and yet drew her closer. They moved through the misty gardens, past the twisted trees and stone statues, their hands brushing occasionally, small sparks of connection igniting between them. The night was alive with magic, alive with the unspoken tension that bound them together.
As they reached the edge of the gardens, the wind howled, carrying with it the faint echo of whispers.
Choose. Or lose her. Draven. Froze. The voice was faint, almost ghostly, but he recognized it immediately. It was the curse speaking, a voice that had haunted the kings of his lineage for centuries. Bearing, and it was testing him, daring him to act, daring him to claim what his heart desired.
Elara sensed his hesitation. What is it? She asked, her voice soft but insistent.
He looked at her, eyes dark and intense. It is the curse.
It tests me! It tests us!
And it will not stop until one of us yields or falls. Elara's gaze held his, steady, unflinching.
Then we will face it together,
she said firmly. Draven wanted to believe her. He wanted to trust that the bond forming between them, fragile and unspoken, could withstand the shadows, the wraiths, and the curse. Yet the fear remained, fear of losing her, fear of failing, fear of what the curse demanded. Suddenly a branch snapped nearby. They both turned, tense, ready for attack. Burton's. From the darkness emerged a single wraith, larger than the others, its eyes glowing with an unnatural fire. It moved swiftly, its presence heavy with malice. Draven stepped forward, placing himself between Elara and the creature. "Stay behind me," he commanded. Elara did not step back. Instead, she reached for his hand, holding it firmly.
Not behind you, she said softly. With you!
The wraith lunged, and Draven moved with the speed and precision of a predator. Magic shimmered along his arms as he struck the shadow, forcing it back. Elara's hand tightened on his, grounding him, giving him strength, reminding him why he fought. The creature hissed and retreated, dissolving into the mist, leaving only silence and the echo of its warning. Draven exhaled slowly, his chest tight with adrenaline and emotion. Brr. He looked at Elara, really looked at her, and saw not only courage but trust, loyalty, and something that stirred his heart in ways power and fear never had. "The curse is strong," he said, voice low.
"And it will not forgive hesitation."
Elara nodded, her gaze unwavering.
"Then we must be stronger." For a moment they simply stood there, hand in hand, surrounded by the glowing mist and twisted trees.
The night was still, but the pulse of magic lingered, a reminder that the battle was far from over. And then a faint whisper carried on the wind, chilling and urgent.
"The heart will break before the king can claim it if he does not act."
Draven's grip on Elara tightened, his jaw set. He would not allow the curse to take her. He would not allow fear, doubt, or shadows to claim what his heart had already chosen. But even as he thought this, a terrible realization struck him. The curse was not merely a test of power. It was a test of love. And love, he now understood, was the most dangerous magic of all. They moved deeper into the gardens toward the heart of the castle, where the old magic slept, where the curse was weakest. And yet, the shadows followed, patient, hungry, and waiting for the moment to strike. The night was far from over. The night deepened over Blackthorn, and the mist that had lingered in the gardens thickened as Draven and Elara moved toward the heart of the castle. The corridors were silent, echoing only their footsteps and the distant roll of thunder over the cliffs. The Alpha King's cloak swirled around his ankles, a shadow among shadows, and every sense was alert. Elara followed closely, her hand occasionally brushing his, small sparks of connection that made her heart both race and ache. Though the castle had been her home for years, tonight it felt alien, alive with secrets that had waited centuries to awaken. Every carved stone, every flicker of candlelight seemed to hum with unseen magic. "This way," Draven said softly, guiding her through a narrow passage that led beneath the castle. "The old magic sleeps in the caverns below. It is the one place where the curse is weaker, where we may find clarity. The word echoed in Elara's mind, yet she could not shake the feeling that the deeper they went, the more dangerous the journey became. She glanced at him. "Do you think the curse will forgive us if we face it together?" Draven's jaw tightened. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the shadows, noting the subtle movements that signaled the presence of the wraiths. Finally, he said, "The curse does not forgive."
"It only tests, and tonight it will test more than our courage."
"It will test our hearts. The entrance to the caverns was a dark archway carved into the stone centuries ago."
A faint glow emanated from within, the phosphorescent light of the crystals embedded in the walls. As they stepped inside, the air grew cooler, heavier, alive with a pulse that seemed almost sentient. "Be careful," Draven warned, his voice low. "The magic here is old and unpredictable. It can protect or destroy, depending on the strength of your will." Elara nodded, gripping his hand.
"Then we will face it together." The caverns twisted beneath the castle, tunnels splitting into multiple paths.
Shadows danced along the walls, and the crystals glimmered with a soft, otherworldly light. It was beautiful, yes, but also eerie, as if the castle itself was watching, testing them, gauging the depth of their bond. A sudden movement caught their attention, a flicker of shadow in the distance. A wraith emerged, larger than those in the gardens, its eyes glowing with an intense, cold fire. It moved with purpose directly toward them. Draven stepped in front of Elara, his hand brushing hers as he moved. Brr. "Stay close," he said, but she did not hesitate. Brr. She mirrored his steps, her presence steadying him even as the wraith advanced. The creature hissed, a sound that seemed to scrape against the walls and the air itself.
Draven extended his hand, a shimmer of power tracing along his fingers, and the wraith recoiled slightly, its form flickering. Elara's heart pounded.
Inspiration. She had seen him command armies, rule a kingdom, and stand against enemies who would have broken lesser men.
But here, in the dim glow of the caverns, she saw him differently. Not as a king, but as a man who could be both vulnerable and powerful at once. The wraith lunged, swift and silent.
Draven moved with precision, striking it back, but it returned again and again, relentless. The caverns echoed with its cries, a haunting chorus that seemed to twist and stretch time itself. Inspiration. Elara felt a pull, a surge of courage she had not known she possessed. She raised her hands, recalling the stories of her ancestors who had faced magic and darkness. Inspiration. A faint glow sparked at her fingertips, faint but present. Draven's eyes widened.
You? You can feel it too? Ilara nodded, taking a deep breath. I think I've always felt it.
Brr. I just never knew what it was. Until now. Brr. Together they faced the wraith, their combined presence a force neither had expected. The shadows hesitated, as if sensing the bond between them. Inspiration. And for a moment, the cavern was still. Draven turned to her, his voice low, almost a growl. "We need to speak. Honestly, no pretenses. Or no hiding."
Elara swallowed, feeling the weight of his gaze.
Brr. "I'm listening," she said softly. Draven exhaled, a rare softness in his eyes. Brit. "I have spent my life commanding, controlling, ruling. I have never let anyone close enough to see the man beneath the crown." Inspiration. "But you make me feel things I cannot name, things I cannot hide." And yet, his hand tightened slightly on hers. "I fear that if I act on these feelings, I will destroy you." Inspiration. "Or worse, I will fail you." Elara's heart ached at the honesty in his voice. "And I—"
I feel the same,
she admitted.
I am drawn to you, more than I should be, more than my duty allows.
And yet I fear that if I trust this, we could both be lost.
Draven's eyes softened. "Then we must be stronger than fear," he said. Inspiration. Stronger than the curse, stronger than the shadows. We cannot let them dictate what we feel. Inspiration. The cavern trembled suddenly, the crystals vibrating with a strange energy. The wraiths had retreated for now, but the curse itself seemed to stir. A low hum filled the air, pulsing through the stone, through their bodies, and even through their hearts. Elara clutched Draven's arm. "It's stronger than before," she whispered. Draven nodded, his eyes scanning the cavern. "The curse tests not only our courage, but our hearts. It knows what we desire and what we fear. It will try to turn that fear against us, to make us doubt, to make us betray what we truly want." They continued deeper into the caverns, the glow of the crystals lighting their path. Inspiration. Shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes that seemed to echo their deepest fears. Visions of loss, of failure, of separation. Elara gasped as she saw a vision of Draven, alone and defeated, the kingdom in ruins around him. Draven's voice cut through her fear. "Do not look at them. They are lies.
Shadows meant to test us.
Inspiration. She turned to him, her eyes glistening.
But what if we fail? He reached for her, taking her hands in his, grounding her.
Inspiration.
Then we rise together, he said firmly. But I will not allow us to fail.
Inspiration. Not while I draw breath. For a long moment they stood in silence, the hum of magic around them, their hands clasped tightly. Brr. The connection between them, fragile and yet undeniable, seemed to grow stronger with every heartbeat. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them shuddered. A deep rumble echoed through the caverns, and the air grew colder, heavier. From the shadows emerged a figure unlike any they had faced, a wraith of immense power, taller than any man, its eyes burning with a strange light. Draven stepped in front of Alara, his stance protective, his presence commanding. "This one is different," he muttered, almost to himself. "Bird. The curse. It has manifested in it."
Alara's heart raced.
She could feel the power radiating from the creature, a force that seemed to reach into their minds, probing their fears, their desires, their hearts. The wraith moved forward slowly, deliberately, as if measuring their strength. Draven extended his hand, magic shimmering along his fingers, and the wraith recoiled slightly, but it did not flee. Alara felt the pull of the magic, a dangerous, intoxicating force. Grasp. She reached for Draven's hand, letting their energy combine. Together they formed a shield of light, a bond of courage and trust. Inspiration. The wraith hissed, circling them, testing their resolve. Draven's voice was low, steady, and filled with unyielding determination.
It will not take us, he said. Not while we stand together. Alara nodded, feeling the truth of his words.
They had come this far, faced fear, and begun to trust not just in each other but in themselves. The wraith lunged, and together they struck, their bond creating a force stronger than fear, stronger than the curse. For a moment, the cavern was still. The wraith faltered, and the hum of magic shifted, as if acknowledging their strength. But then, a whisper carried through the shadows, chilling and urgent. One must fall, or both will break.
Alara's eyes widened, fear mingling with determination. Draven's jaw tightened.
The curse was far from over, and the trials of heart and courage were only beginning. Hand in hand, they prepared to face whatever came next, their bond a fragile shield against the darkness that sought to divide them. And deep in the shadows, the true test of their hearts waited, patient, inevitable, and merciless.
The storm raged over Blackthorn, lightning splitting the sky and rain hammering the jagged cliffs below.
Inside the castle, the halls shook with the same intensity, as if the kingdom itself mirrored the turmoil in the hearts of its rulers. King Draven and Lady Alara stood at the edge of the grand throne room, the space transformed into a battlefield between shadow and light. The air shimmered with ancient magic, the pulse of the curse vibrating through every stone, every corner. Wraiths circled the hall, whispering in voices that carried the weight of centuries. Their glowing eyes reflected the silver lightning that flashed through the broken windows. And at the center of it all, Draven and Alara faced the greatest threat yet, the spirit of Draven's father, the king whose pride and fear had first bound the curse to the family. Draven's jaw was tight, his cloak clinging to his frame as he stepped forward. His eyes were dark with determination, a fire that no storm could extinguish. "We will end this," he said, his voice carrying over the howling wind and the whispers of shadows. Whatever it takes. Alara stood beside him, her hand brushing against his, grounding him, giving him strength. She had never felt power like this before, not in armies, not in crowns, not in any magic she had read about in old books. This was raw, living, and demanding courage in ways that both terrified and exhilarated her. The spirit of Draven's father materialized fully, towering and imposing, his face a mask of anger and disappointment.
Draven, it thundered, voice echoing through the hall. You have failed your line. You have allowed desire and weakness to fester.
You will pay for the sins of your heart. Draven straightened, his chest rising with controlled defiance. Father, I am no longer the man who feared emotion over duty. I have learned that strength is not only in ruling, but in loving. Elara's eyes widened. She had never heard him speak with such honesty, such vulnerability, and yet the stakes could not have been higher. The wraiths shifted closer, the air thick with the threat of violence.
The spirit laughed, a chilling sound that rattled the walls.
Love is a chain, Draven. It is the curse.
It will destroy you and everything you hold dear. Draven's hand found Elara's, and for a moment, everything else faded. The wraiths, the storm, the whispers. It was just them. Two hearts bound by courage and trust. Then we break the chain, he said firmly.
Together! Elara nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest despite the cold, oppressive magic. Together, she echoed.
The air shivered, and the wraiths surged forward. The battle was not physical alone. It was a battle of wills.
Draven stepped into the center of the hall, raising his hands, calling forth every ounce of his power. The crystals embedded in the throne room floor began to glow, feeding the energy that pulsed through the castle. Elara followed, raising her own hands, letting her newfound connection to the magic flow into him. Their energy combined, a stream of light and warmth that cut through the darkness, illuminating the shadows and making the wraiths hiss and falter. The spirit of Draven's father roared, fury and grief blending into one. You will never undo the curse. It is part of your blood, part of your line. Draven took a deep breath, focusing on the truth he had only recently embraced. Love was not weakness. Desire was not failure. Courage was not only in strength, it was in trust, in vulnerability, in the willingness to stand for another. He channeled this belief, this heart-driven magic, directly into the curse. Elara's voice joined his, soft but firm. We are not afraid. We will not let it define us. We choose hope, love, and freedom.
The wraiths screamed, shrieking as the combined energy of their bond surged outward.
Shadows twisted, tried to resist, but the power of their connection, of hearts willing to face fear, doubt, and pain together, was stronger than centuries of curses. Lightning flashed directly into the throne, illuminating Draven's face, his eyes locked on Elara's. They were no longer king and noblewoman, ruler and subject. They were two souls fighting for each other and for the kingdom. Suddenly the spirit of Draven's father lunged, trying to pierce the shield of magic to undo their bond. Draven stepped forward, not with fear, but with acceptance. He knew that to protect her he might have to face ultimate pain. And in that moment he did not hesitate. Your power will not break me, he shouted, drawing the curse into himself. The wraiths shrieked and shriveled, the shadows twisting and breaking apart. The energy was overwhelming, almost too much for a single human to bear. But Elara's hands on his arms, her presence, gave him strength beyond measure. The light exploded, bright and pure, washing over the throne room, the castle, the mountains, and the storm outside. When the brilliance faded, the wraiths were gone. The spirit of Draven's father had vanished, leaving only silence and the faint shimmer of old magic settling back into the stones. Draven collapsed to his knees, exhaustion gripping him, his body trembling from the effort. Elara knelt beside him, holding him close. "Draven," she whispered, tears glinting in her eyes. "You did it. You saved us, and the kingdom." He shook his head, weakly smiling. "We saved each other," he corrected, his voice barely above a whisper. The storm outside had calmed, leaving only the gentle patter of rain on the stones. Dawn was breaking, a pale light spilling into the throne room, bathing them in silver and gold. For the first time, Blackthorn felt alive in a new way, not as a place of fear and shadows, but as a kingdom of hope and renewal. Elara stood and helped Draven to his feet. His legs trembled, but his eyes burned with life, determination, and something softer now: love, gratitude, and humility.
The throne room was quiet, the echoes of the night fading.
Draven turned to Elara, taking her hands in his, feeling the warmth and strength that had carried them through the darkness. "The curse is gone," he said softly. "The shadows cannot claim us, and I am free to be what I have longed to be, with you, Brett."
Elara smiled, tears sliding down her cheeks. "And I am free to choose you." For a long moment they simply stood there, hands intertwined, hearts racing, the silence between them filled with understanding, relief, and a promise.
Then, slowly, Draven reached for the throne, placing a hand on the black stone, as if grounding himself.
The kingdom.
"Still needs me," he said, voice steady. "But I will rule differently now. Not through fear, but through care, strength and justice, and hope." Elara nodded, a quiet pride in her eyes.
And love, she said.
He smiled, a faint, rare smile that reached his eyes. "Yes, love," he admitted. Outside, the first birds of morning sang, the mist lifted from the mountains, and the castle seemed to breathe again, free from centuries of darkness. Blackthorn would recover, would thrive, because its rulers had faced not only external threats, A subtle hum lingered in the air, almost imperceptible, a reminder that magic, love, and courage were never fully still. But this time, it was not threatening. It was alive, vibrant, and filled with possibility. Draven and Elara walked to the balcony together, hand in hand, looking out over the kingdom. The sun rose slowly, golden and warm, cutting through the remnants of storm clouds. For the first time, Draven felt peace, not the peace of control or power, but the peace of having faced his fears, embraced his heart, and fought for love that was real and mutual. Elara leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder.
"We survived!"
she whispered. "Yes," he replied, voice low, filled with certainty.
"We survived, together. And as the light of dawn bathed Blackthorn, the kingdom and its rulers stood reborn. The curse had tested them, the shadows had tried to break them, but love, courage, and trust had prevailed."
Though life would bring new challenges, this night had proven one undeniable truth. When hearts are united, even the oldest magic, even the darkest shadows can be overcome. The castle was quiet now, but the memory of the storm lingered. Draven looked at Elara once more, his eyes soft but fierce, filled with gratitude and promise.
"This is only the beginning,"
he said, a faint smile curving his lips. "But now we face it together. Always."
Elara smiled back, feeling the weight of the past, the relief of the present, and the hope of a future yet unwritten. "Always," she agreed. The sun climbed higher, spilling light over the kingdom, and for the first time in centuries, Blackthorn was free, free from fear, free from the curse, and full of possibility. Bird. And at the center of it all, two hearts beat as one, ready to face whatever came next, unafraid, unbroken, and bound by love.